Hello, my friends. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the autosomal DNA results, predicted phenotype traits, and even GD match results of an Aboriginal native Australian. The sample name is KP1. In terms of where he is from, let me show you the location. In terms of the time period when this individual lived, it looks like he lived in the um, 16 centuries before present. So maybe fourth. I think it's fourth century Common Era. Because 16 centuries before present, and that would be around 4 centuries Common Era, 4 centuries after the birth of Jesus. So in terms of the European timelines, this would be around the late Iron Age. For Australia, I'm not really sure if they even had metal tools yet at this time period. But in Europe, this would be the late Iron Age, and this is the location where this individual is from. Looks like the very southeast of Australia, next to Sydney, actually. Very interesting. In terms of the climate, I'm pretty sure. I think the south of Australia and closer to New Zealand has more of a temperate climate. It's a little bit more like livable and inhabitable. I can tell you for a fact, like this place like this stuff, all of this in orange, it would probably be very difficult to survive in this environment. I'm not sure if there's any uh, Aboriginal Australian ancient samples from this location. It would be very interesting to explore them and what kind of traits they have, because it is certainly a very extreme condition to survive in. So this is actually a man. So he has YDNA. With my trait predictor, the YDNA that my trait predictor determined for him is K. So the derivation is F and then K. Unfortunately, K is not a modern lineage. It's a lineage that is ancestral to a lot of modern lineages, but it is not a modern lineage. So I actually did some research on this little spreadsheet, and this individual's YDNA is actually S. Yeah, it's S. But what's interesting about SYDNA is S is a subclade of K. So you see, it's K. K sort of went into K2. K2 is a subclade of K, and then MS is a subclade of K2, the same as P and NO, and P is the father clade of Q and R. So this individual's YDNA being determined as K, what it really means is that there is no, he does not have any variants for N or O, and he does not have any variants for Q or R. So the only conclusion we can draw from this is he probably has some kind of M or S YDNA, which in reality he does. He has S YDNA. So my trait predictor, if you know how to interpret the result, you sort of still can arrive at the right conclusion. You can still determine that his YDNA is S. I probably will add S to the list of YDNA that I look for. It's probably a good idea to do that. But so far, it looks like it did correctly determine his YDNA to be K. All right, we're gonna go to the ethnic calculator results and GD match results. Let's start with my ethnic calculator, um, my trade predictor ethnic calculator. This calculation was based on 617 S&P, so it's a really good prediction. And the closest group to him is Ongia, Andamanese Islander, followed by Anzac Amerindian, followed by Sri Lankan, followed by Uyghur. And what's interesting, there's even Goyet. There's this European European sort of Cro-Magnon, something intermediate between Cro-Magnons and hunter-gatherers, Western hunter-gatherers. So this European individual from the Upper Paleolithic also shows up here among the closest groups, followed by Salhit, Upper Paleolithic individual from Mongolia, South Asians. So it looks like there is a similarity between this individual and various extreme South Asians, such as, for example, Onge, because Onge shows up closest here. Let's explore what he gets with GD match with Ancient Eurasia K6. I find this to be a very interesting calculator, especially for groups like Australians and Melanesians and South Indians, because they have an ancestral South Eurasian category here, which sort of shows you how much of this South Eurasian drift they have. And you can see this individual has a lot of South Eurasian specific drift. Whereas with other calculators, you might not get this precision. You might not get this. It's very interesting. Like with Eurogenes K13, for example, this individual's result is absolutely garbage. They score a bunch of other components that they aren't supposed to score, aside from Oceanian. So let's click on the Oracle, and with the Oracle, This individual is closest to Ongia. By the way, I gotta give props to my ethnic calculator. It also registered this individual being closest to Ongia. Followed by Ongia, it's Australians, okay, and Andamanese, all kind of in the same area, all kind of look the same, pretty much. Papuan come at fourth place, then Paniyas, Paliyar, Haria, Bengali, and various South Indian groups. Gujarati is not in South India, but they are sort of South Indian as well in terms of like what they look like. They are in northwest of India, but they look really South Indian, and their genetics is South Indian as well. Okay, what about? I have another calculator I want to show you. What about MDLPK16? It's a very interesting calculator. Once again, I like it as well because it has an Australian component. And with this calculator, he's scoring 47% of the Australian component, which is really good, really interesting to see. A little bit of Indian as well, but I think I think most of these Australian natives will score a little bit of Indian. There is just a lot of affinities that exist between South Asians and Australians, native Australians. He's scoring 29% Oceanic, very interesting. A little bit of Southeast Asian and a little bit of Sub-Saharan African as well. All right, that's pretty interesting to see. He's not scoring any step, and he's not scoring any Caucasian, and that's interesting. He's not scoring any of the components that make up Europeans. Aside from Northeast European, he's scoring Northeast European. He's scoring a little bit of Neolithic, right? So he does have a little bit of Northeast European admixture here, but not step, which is very interesting. Let's go ahead and check the oracle, and with the oracle, we're gonna wait for it to load. Yeah, he is closest to Australian, which I don't know why it's labeled, why it says NA in the brackets. I'm not sure what that means. What is NA? Maybe comment if you have an idea of what NA might mean here. Followed by Kosipia. I don't know what that is, from Papua New Guinea, Papuan. Various other Papuan groups. Then Ongia. Ongia comes close once again, but it's not really close. Look at the distance. Yeah, it's actually not close at all. Yeah, it's actually pretty distant. So the only population he's sort of close to are Australians. And he's getting modeled as a mixture of Kosipe plus Melanesian, okay, or Australian plus Koinanbia, whatever that means. Let's look up what these people look like, Koinanbia. Because Australians, we know what they look like. But Koinanbia, let's look them up. They kind of look black. Or no, what? I can't. Well, this definitely looks black, but it might not be that. Uh, I don't know. Kind of ambiguous looking. Kind of really ambiguous looking. Maybe like a little bit Southeast Asian or something. I don't know. Tibetan. I don't know. Okay, let's take something that's a little bit less ambiguous, like like this. Um, Kosipa. Let's see what these people look like. All right, so they kind of look like Australian Aboriginals. You see those kind of really rugged features, really big brow ridge, kind of a yeah, very interesting features. Yeah, yeah, very interesting features. They kind of look black, but at the same time, like not exactly. You can see there's uh, something that's a little bit more like robust or something, more archaic looking than modern black people. That's what I think. All right, and for Melanesians, well, we know what they look like, but let's just show you what they look like. Um, in case you don't know, because really they're really obscure people. That's what they look like. I think Melanesians, and especially like in pictures like these, look a lot more black. They look a lot more like what you would expect, but still not really. You still have this brow ridge, and you still have this kind of a look that's a really mean look, right? And sub-Saharan Africans don't really have that look in general. So it's but this, for example, this looks pretty black, or like Somali actually, Somali or um, Ethiopian or something. That's the vibe I get from this girl. Uh, yeah. All right. So let's explore what this individual actually looks like with my trait predictor noshacot. We're gonna start with noshacot, and it looks like this individual has darkest brown eyes, definitely very dark color of eyes. No likelihood of any eye color lighter than hazel, so definitely very dark in color. Black hair once again, so this individual does not have any kind of light. There is no chance for this individual to have any kind of light hair color. For skin color, most likely light brown skin, which might not be very accurate. Might not be very accurate because I think um, I think these Australian natives in general have pretty dark brown skin. But that's interesting. Okay, and this individual is predicted to have straight hair. Okay, that's also very interesting. And but there is sort of a high likelihood of wavy and curly hair as well. And I have another Australian Aboriginal on my drive that I'm gonna make a video on pretty soon. That other Australian Aboriginal was scoring mostly kinky hair, so maybe in this case this individual really did have straight hair. But from the pictures, if you look at the pictures online, it's pretty uncommon for these people to have straight hair. So in this case, I think it's a little bit of inaccuracy. For blue eye haplotypes and coloring, it looks like this individual has blue eye haplotype 1. Very good to see. No BEH2, no BEH3, but he does have blue eye haplotype 1. Okay, so there is some variation here, and he does have variants that contribute to light pigmentation of eyes and hair. So despite having blue eye haplotype 1, he still scores mostly darkest brown eyes, 86% for that, despite having BEH1. Keep that in mind. It looks like he does not have the Eurasian light skin mutation in SLC 24A5, so darker skin tone here. And it looks like he does have Eurasian light skin variants in ASEEP, which is very interesting to see. He's got heterozygous genotype in these variations of SLC 45A2, so intermediate coloring of eyes, hair, and skin. And let's see what else. He has two light color variants in both of these variations of Keto G. So this was a big contributing factor to him scoring light brown instead of dark brown skin, because these variations contribute to skin color big time. Like they play a big role. And it looks like he has two light color variants in both of them. Okay, MC1R, no derived variants in here, so no predisposition to being ginger. All right, that's pretty much all there is to know about his phenotype, what he looks like. Let's go ahead and explore his polygenic risk scores now. And it looks like he's got a higher than average, significantly higher than average odds of schizophrenia, a below average odds of diabetes, a significantly higher, like incredibly high score for Alzheimer's. We're actually going to have to explore the risk score for Alzheimer's a little bit more in depth afterwards, because this is really extreme. Below average score for multiple sclerosis, 2 risk variants for breast cancer at 24, which is pretty typical. Okay, so we have to keep in mind about Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is something we're going to have to talk about a little bit later. This individual has 13 risk variants for testicular cancer out of 24, which is pretty typical, nothing to worry about. 0 risk variants for celiac disease out of 12, pretty typical. 0 for GSS out of 18, pretty typical. 4 for Crohn's out of 28, pretty typical once again. 0 risk variants for Riefenstein's out of 26, pretty typical once again. 4 risk variants for Parkinson's out of 46, kind of high. So we have to keep in mind about Parkinson's, but we can't really check Parkinson's, unfortunately. And we have to keep in mind about Alzheimer's. The cool thing about the Alzheimer's prediction is we can actually sort of see what contributed to the score, whereas with Parkinson's we can't. All right, so for results, it looks like he's got warrior genotype in COMT and warrior genotype in MAOA, so definitely much more warrior than warrior, which means that this individual probably has quicker breakdown of dopamine, therefore decreased dopamine levels. The implications of this kind of a genotype is that he probably has advantages in stress resiliency, but disadvantages in memory and attention tasks. It looks like he does not have any derived no-go learner variants in DRD2's pro-variants in pro variation, so slightly higher number of dopamine D2 receptor sites in the brain. He also does not have the A1 allele in TAC1 variation of DRD2, which is really good to see. So he does not have a decreased number of dopamine D2 receptor sites in the brain. Really good to see. Normal risk score for stuff like ADHD and alcoholism. This individual has long form 5-HTTL-PR. Look at that. Wow, I found somebody with long form 5-HTTL-PR, and this is not even a European. Not even a European, just straight up an Australian with long form 5-HTTL-PR. It's really uncommon. The long form 5-HTTL-PR is most common and most typical for Europeans. It is really, really rare outside of Europe. And this guy is as far from Europe as you can probably get in terms of geography. And he's got, is it as far as you can get from Europe? Hold on, let's see. So he's here, and Europe is all the way here. Yeah, I think it is as far as you can get. Like even places in America, you can cross over the Atlantic, and it would be quicker. So yeah, it literally is. I lost track of where it is. It literally is as far as you can get from Europe geographically. That's kind of interesting. All right, where was I? For mental health results, autism, we're gonna skip that. We don't care. Um, no, he has this genotype, which means he's a carrier of two rare alleles that protect from autism. That's very interesting. That's a rare genotype. DDC, we're gonna skip. Lactose persistence, it looks like he does not have any European variants for lactose persistence. For OXTR and the empathy gene, it looks like he's got this genotype, which leads to higher levels of empathy. Wow, cool. Two variants for higher levels of empathy here. Two variants for higher levels of empathy here. Heterozygous genotype here, but higher levels of empathy once again, and two variants for higher levels of empathy here once again. So definitely very empathetic, at least if you only take into account the OXTR genotype. For diabetes, it looks like does not have type 1 diabetes, really good to see. For hemochromatosis, no risk variants for hemochromatosis. Well, nothing is surprising about that because hemochromatosis variants are really only found in Europeans or people close to Europe, and this is really far from Europe. For Alzheimer's, it looks like he does not have any risk variants for Alzheimer's in this ARG 176 cis variation, but he does have two risk variants for Alzheimer's in this APOE variation. So this is he does have risk variants for Alzheimer's in the APOE, and this is by far the biggest contributor to his high score for Alzheimer's. As you can see, this kind of a genotype leads to 12 to 61 times higher risk of Alzheimer's than average. It's really crazy. It's a really crazy risk for Alzheimer's that you get from this genotype. So it looks like in terms of score for Alzheimer's, he definitely has a high likelihood of that. It's most likely that he did develop Alzheimer's if he lived to an old age. Unfortunately, I think with the kind of technology and medicine and the kind of lifestyle that you could live in European Iron Age in this location as a native Australian without any technology, you probably might not even live to the age where people develop Alzheimer's. But yeah, multiple sclerosis. It looks like no variants for multiple sclerosis in HLA, which is really good to see. For cardiovascular, should I skip it? I don't know. Yeah, I don't see anything too interesting here, so we're gonna skip it. For myopia, it looks like he's got yep, nothing interesting. For miscellaneous section, no micropenis, really good to see. No micropenis in this variation either, so definitely no micropenis, really good to see. 8 points higher IQ than individuals with AA genotype, higher IQ, slightly increased cranial size, and 1% higher IQ. Really cool stuff to see here. For fat gene variants, no fat gene variants and FTOs RS9949609. So this individual does not have a predisposition to being obese, and he's got better performing muscles, likely sprinter more than endurance athlete. For EDAR, it looks like he does not carry the East Asian EDAR genotype in the main variation of EDAR, but he does have a very East Asian genotype in this variation of EDAR, and this is a big part of what contributed to him scoring straight hair. Um, it does contribute to the score for hair texture, and it contributed to him scoring straight hair for sure. It's a big contribution factor. As you can see, his genotype here is typical for East Asians in this variation of EDAR. For drug response, it looks like he's got lower odds of cannabis-induced psychosis, which is a very European genotype to to see. So it's interesting that he's got so many European, specifically European genotypes, such as like let's scroll up here, such as having long form 5-HT-TLPR, such as being sort of resistant from cannabis-induced psychosis. For albinism and the typical traits panel, it looks like he is not albino. He does not carry any variants for albinism, and he's not a carrier for Melanesian blonde hair variants either. So he does not have Melanesian blonde hair variants. Really good, really interesting to see. I wouldn't say good, just interesting. For familiar Mediterranean fever, he does not have any risk variants for that. Familiar Mediterranean fever is a illness that mostly affects people of Eastern Mediterranean, such as Jews, Arabs, Turkish people, Greeks. It is not really found in Australian Aboriginals. For MTHFR panel, it looks like this individual has. Well, we're gonna skip that, or are we? No, we're not gonna skip it. Let's talk about it. So he's got normal homocysteine levels, and it looks like he does not have any problems processing folic acid, and he actually has lower than average odds for a variety of illnesses from autism to coronary heart disease. Pretty healthy guy. For cancer section, it looks like he's got some genotypes that increase the risk of testicular cancer. So for testicular cancer, it looks like there might be a high risk for that. For leukemia panel, it looks like he does not really have any risk variants for leukemia. Really good to see. For rare diseases panel, no von Gerg's disease. He is a carrier for variant for Bloom syndrome. Wow, that's interesting. He's a carrier for a variant of Bloom syndrome. I don't think I've seen that before. Okay, that's interesting. But carrier doesn't mean if it says carrier, then it's probably not expressed. It's probably a recessive trait, and you need two risk alleles to actually have the illness. So in this case, it's probably nothing to worry about. He's got heterozygous genotype here, which leads to slightly increased risk for several autoimmune diseases, including Addison's disease. No GSS. Um, Nothing too interesting here. For celiac disease, it looks like no risk variance for that. Really good to see. For allergies, we're going to skip that. For androgen receptor gene panel, it looks like it does not have the variation that protects from baldness. There is actually a allele here. I think it's the A allele, which greatly reduces the odds of baldness and basically completely sort of protects you from going bald, from male pattern baldness. And it is very East Asian and Sub-Saharan African. That's what I know about it. It's most common in East Asians and Sub-Saharan Africans, and Europeans are the ones who typically have the higher odds of baldness here. So it looks like this individual has a typical European genotype here, which means higher odds of baldness. Okay, for Crohn's disease, looks like no risk variance for Crohn's disease. There's three variations that contribute the most to Crohn's disease risk, and I wrote them out here. So he's got genotypes for 2 out of 3, which is really good to see. For Canavan syndrome, zero risk variance for that. For HIV and AIDS panel, it looks like he does not have any protective variants from HIV. Protective variants from HIV are most common in Europeans, and it's nothing is surprising that he does not have those variants because he's not even close to European. I think I've seen non-Europeans with them though, but it is still most common in Europeans. And for muscular dystrophy myopathies, it looks like zero risk variance for all of them. Really good to see. Zero risk variance for adrenoleukodystrophy out of 50 total. Really good to see. No ADL. And for color blindness, it's at the very bottom. You might not be able to see. Let me zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about here. So wait. Let me zoom in at the bottom. So you can see color blindness. He's got zero risk variance in OPN1LW out of 4, so no risk variance for color blindness in this gene. Now, OPN1LW and OPN1MW are both in the X chromosome, so they're both inherited by the X, which means that if you are a male and you have risk variants there, you probably will have color blindness. If you are a woman and you have risk variants there, you most likely will not experience any symptoms unless you have homozygous genotype. For women, you got to have homozygous genotype. For men, if you have any risk variants, you're most likely going to be colorblind. This gene is actually located on the 7th chromosome, so does not function the same way. In this gene, both men and women need to have 2 risk variants to exhibit the trait. So it looks like this individual does not have color blindness. Thanks for watching my video until the end. It was very interesting for me to explore because believe it or not, I don't look through the information beforehand before I make the video. So my reaction to the information is completely authentic. Just a little fun fact. And you can download this file in 23andMe format from link which is in the description of the video. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Goodbye.